I just had to start this timer because I'm a Baptist minister. We have to, yeah, okay, some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And I listen to that guy on the radio a lot. And so I finally got a chance to put a face to this voice I hear in the morning when I'm going to work. So I want to thank Hospitality House, especially about the topic. It's about fatherhood. And I'm from Selma, Alabama, and I landed in Minnesota in 1960, the same year that Hospitality House started, okay? Now, my mother, when she would leave the house, she would tell us 2 or 3 things, but we always had to remember the last thing she said, because that was the most important. The first couple you could get away with, but if that last one wasn't done, there would be problems. Last chapter, last book, last verse of the Old Testament. I will send the prophet Elijah, and I will turn the hearts of the children to the fathers, and the hearts of the fathers to the children, else I will curse the land. That's the last chapter, last verse in the Old Testament. So I started in Selma, Alabama, 5 little brothers, and we had the greatest life you can imagine. I did not know that people didn't go to church 7 days a week. I didn't know that. When you talk about the Bible Belt, it's supposed to be somewhere up here, but the belt and the suspenders is down in Selma, Alabama, okay? And I had the happiest childhood ever. Pork chops for breakfast? Are you kidding me? Whatever, we ate at night, we ate in the morning, we always had food. We didn't go to the store for things. Everybody was married. The preacher would come over. If you did really good in church, the preacher would come over and eat dinner with you. I mean, that's the pastor. If the pastor walked in and the president walked in, we'd ask the president to wait a minute until the pastor had sat down and had his meal. That's how big a pastor was in my family. And my grandmother told me, you're going to be a minister. And she would have me recite the books of the Bible. So as a young kid, loved the Lord. Just loved him, man, because especially, I had 2 grandmothers now. One, Mom Floody, Floody, and one Big Mama. And now down south, Big Mama's a name of honor, okay? Big Mama didn't whoop kids, but Mama Floody did. So I didn't spend much time at Mama Floydy's house because she just believed in beating the devil out you before he got you, okay? So anyways, but Big Mama, she was like the matriarch of our family. We had, like I said, man, a great, great life. I was about, in 1960, I think I was 6 years old. We moved up here to Minnesota. Now, my father came first because Martin Luther King was down south and it wasn't pretty down there. We were running from Selma, Alabama. All I knew is that my mother was scared of white folks. That's all I knew. And she wouldn't let me talk to them or anything. She was just like, no, stay away. She was that scared. So we come up here, and when my father picked me up, he had came up a year before us. Down south, he was a deacon in the church. He's a big guy. Back then, he was a big guy, 6'2", 250. Just loved the Lord. He sang in the choir. Man, just a perfect dad. How could you not love a guy like this? Love my mom and took care of us and fed us. Then when I came up here and met him, I didn't recognize him at first. He had, down south, he wore overalls. Up here, he smelled funny. His hair was different. His clothes were bright. And he pulled up to get us, and what old folks will know what this is, a deuce and a quarter. Yes, an Electra 225 Buick. As long as this building, okay? But that was a sharp car, brand new. I don't know how, I'm trying to figure it out. And that night, he brought us to a place, an apartment, and he left, and he came back, and he came in the house and beat my mother. I had never seen violence before. I'd never been in a fight. All we did was work and went to school and played and had fun as a family. So this, I thought it would go, I didn't even know what to do. I'm the oldest now. I'm about 7 years old. So I don't know what to do with this, okay? And then the next night, he did the same thing. And pretty soon, it was every night. So me being a prayer warrior, I'm going to pray this out of here. And I got my little brothers together, and we started praying. For about 2 weeks, we prayed every night that he wouldn't walk through that door. Then we changed our prayer. We're going to pray that he gets in an accident or something, or somebody beats him up. That didn't work. Then we prayed that we would get big overnight so that we could beat him up ourselves. That didn't work. Then we stopped praying. So that child that was groomed to be a pastor was now hating God. He had took all my innocence that went away. And my father did this for years. And what they would tell us is, don't tell them people. Well, them people meant anybody. We couldn't tell anybody what was going on in our house. Some nights I would come home and she'd be like chained in the basement. That was my life. So what did that look like to a school teacher? Well, it looked like I had attention deficit disorder. They put me on drugs because I couldn't tell them what was wrong with me. And I had no outlet, nothing, In the summertime, if we didn't go to school, we didn't eat. My father took all the money. So my hero became the boogeyman. My hero became a person to me that I swore one day I'm going to kill him. I'm going down that road. Well, when your father takes the roof off, your father to me is the roof of the family. And if the roof is leaking, you call the carpenter. That's an analogy for Jesus, or some of you might know. Okay, yeah. He had a job. He was a carpenter. I had to put that one in there. But my father wouldn't let the carpenter work on him. And he was an alcoholic and an abusive man and stuff. So we got these little kids. We're nailing doors shut. We're doing everything we can to keep him out of the house. In the summertime, like I said, we don't eat. So when the father is gone, when the roof ain't on the house, the wolves come around. So one day I used to go and collect pop bottles, and I'd get a couple of cents apiece for them, because there was 3 black grocery stores. And for a while, I would just run in and grab some lunch meat and the bread and just run out, just to feed my family. I would never take more than we needed. And a pack of bologna would last us all weekend, us 5 little boys. Because my mother, she wasn't eating much. So they stopped me from doing that. They would see me coming. Never once did someone ask me, why are you doing this, kid? Never once did somebody grab me and take me home. It wouldn't have did any good, probably, to say, why is this happening? Why is this kid stealing? Pretty soon now, I'm about 10. Guy down the street says, hey, come here, boy, I got some pop bottles for you. And I said, oh, okay, because I'm going through garbage cans. And he said, do you want some White Castles? Back then, they were 12 cents a piece. You could buy 8 of them for $1, okay? I got 5 little brothers and a mother at home. I didn't even know what a White Castle was. So I went with him to get the White Castles. He took me to get them, put them in a bag, and he said, I'm going to give you a Coca-Cola, too. Man, you talking about a hungry kid? What a treat. And so he said, but you have to eat them at my house. Well, I went in his house, and I'm going to eat 2 White Castles. He didn't want my brothers to be jealous that I got 2, and everybody else gets 1 and stuff. And as I was going to leave, he said, I want my hamburgers back. See, he knew, he had been watching us. He was a predator in our neighborhood. That day changed my life even further, because now there was 2 men I was going to kill. But I took the hamburgers home, and my mama asked me, where'd I get them from? I said, the guy down the street. She said, why are you crying? I said, I don't know. But there were tears of rage. I was no longer little Johnny no more. I was no longer this kid that would quote Bible scriptures to you. Jesus did not exist in my life. So now I'm growing up, and one of my cousins come up. I won't name the city he came from. It gets a bad name. I'll name it anyways. He came up from Chicago and stuff, and gave me my first gun. Told me to go, if I was hungry, go into the grocery store or wherever, pull the gun out, and they'll give you money. And I did. And he would give me $10. I'd just bring him the bag full of money. And I did this every Saturday. And, you know, one of the things you'll learn if you're a criminal, that the police have a thing called MO, a method of operation, I think it is. Well, whatever it was, they followed, they tracked what I was doing. And one day I came out of a store and they were standing there. And they arrested me. Of course, my cousin was across the street. So, boom, now I'm in the criminal justice system. But I'm not that kid anymore. I am not little Johnny, the preacher's, the soon would-be preacher. I became a predator, meaning that I would hurt you. If you looked at me the wrong way, I would hurt you. I started lifting weights so I could get stronger, because if I thought you made fun of my name, I would hurt you. If I thought anything, because everything, it wasn't you that I was trying to hurt, it was that guy and my father. And one day I'm going to be big enough to kill both of them. I just feel it in my spirit. Well, the guy did it to another kid in the neighborhood, and he had a father that beat the guy up and ran him out of the neighborhood. You know, he had some protection around him. Now I'm doing armed robberies. By the time I'm 16, I've been shot. I'd shot other people. Had gotten my girlfriend shot. My baby shot, bullet ricocheted off my baby's leg. I was a new father at 16. I was a full-grown monster. I could care less about you and who you were. I could care less about Jesus and all of that. We ain't going to church. And the first order of business before I turned 18 was to kill my father. So I tricked him into a parking lot, told him that I needed a job. I just got out of jail. And he took me to the parking lot. He was a supervisor. You know, he had a very nice job. We just didn't see any other money. And I put a pistol to his head. Now, I knew he had a gun, but I took the bullets out of his gun that night. I needed him to pull that gun because for something in me still said, he's your father. I needed a reason to say he pulled a pistol on me. I didn't know what else to say when they came to arrest me. But if I kill him while I'm 16, I'll only do 5 years. Because it'd be sort of self-defense, but in the state of Minnesota, laws were a little lenient back then. I figured all this out. I was a criminal now. Well, that's the last time my father hit my mother. I didn't kill him. He didn't go for his gun. And we parted ways. The next time I would see him, he was on his deathbed, cancer. He was 60 years old, died of cancer. And my auntie and my big mama made me go and forgive him. I didn't mean it, but it took a weight off of me. It did something in that moment when I said, I forgive you, Dad. And all he said was, you can't change who you are. But now the great migration of turnip seeds are coming up here, okay? Now, not all of them have my name because we stopped getting married. See, the men came up and my father told them, put your wife and your kids over here, get divorced, and welfare will take care of them. And then you can have a girlfriend over here, okay? And then you can come work at the metal coating plant. That was the system. And when the boys, we're boy heavy in our family. Up here, you got that little bitty families. You know, we have 18 and 23 in some of our families and stuff. I mean, we down south, everybody got food, right? You know, all you need is food and love and family. You know, you have 40. I don't think that's possible, but all the boys, you know, we're boy heavy and we loved each other. So when they came up here, by the time I'm 16, I'm driving new cars. I got so much money in my pocket, I could pay my mama's rent. I got, you know, 4 or 5 girlfriends, and everybody, how did you, what? I'll show you how. So I started teaching my relatives how to be criminals. By the time you were 13 in our family, you had a pistol, okay? In our family, you can drop out of school because what you going to school for? You're going to be a pimp or a drug dealer. That's what you're going to be, you know? So we didn't, all that truant officer stuff, we didn't care about all that. So boys in our family is dropping out of school. Girls in our family are being pregnant at 16. And we banded together and started what I'm ashamed to say, it was the largest gang in Minnesota. At one time, it was called the Rolling 30s Bloods. And we terrorized Minneapolis. These would-be preacher boys. And nobody really connected because our names are different. You know, we got different 15, 16 different names in our family and stuff. Nobody's getting married. Nobody's claiming their kids. You don't sign birth certificates. No, because then you have to pay child support. We ain't doing that. You go into the penitentiary or to the graveyard. It doesn't matter which one. It's going to happen. Now I'm having kids, and instead of raising kids, I'm raising gangsters, you know. I have a son that's probably one of the most infamous characters in Minnesota history. I say that. The Minneapolis police and every major gang hates this kid, okay? He was me on steroids. He watched his father terrorize and intimidate people, and he became one of the enforcers for the Rolling 30s Bloods. So now I'm just living my life. I'm in and out of jail. I'm at 18, I was doing 10 years in St. Cloud State Penitentiary. I ended up being put out of the penitentiary because I was so disruptive. That sounds crazy, but I started the first prison gang in the state of Minnesota and also helped start an organization that funneled drugs into the penitentiary. Just because I was a criminal didn't mean I couldn't think, but my thinking was not for Jesus, and nobody went to church. Now I'm rolling along and stuff. I had a hiccup in one of my nights in prison. One of my 3-year-old sons, my wife had ran off with another gangster, and he killed my son, babysitting him. But why not? His father's in the penitentiary. Who can protect him? If I say this, if I'd have been out of jail, good or bad or indifferent, I believe my child would have been alive because, you know, cowards don't hurt kids that have fathers. They try not to. That's a problem. So now we're going up in the gang culture, and one thing we knew about turning out women to prostitution or whatever we did, if they had a father at home, you stayed away from them. Or if they were a church girl or a church boy, you leave them alone because you got to get through too many layers to get them to do things, okay? So I'm just, by the time I'm 19, 20 years old, I had another kid or two, and I'm in and out of jail. I get out, I was in my 30s. I did 3 years in the penitentiary. And I organized this gang of criminals. And Tom Lydon, Channel 9 News, I'll give him a plug because he actually changed my life without knowing it. I got caught for running an international ring of thieves. At the same time, I was a teacher. Back then, you could get through, back doors, because I had the education that I needed. I taught computer programming, which I knew very well. And I was actually a really good teacher. That was the front for my criminal life. You know, I had to have a job so that people would see where some of my money came from. That was, and your parole officer, they're not going to not let you have a job. So one day, I told you about that method of operation. They tracked us. There was 5 police jurisdictions that tracked me and my guys that I was working with, and they busted me red-handed, okay? When they caught me, I started crying. First time in my life. I was actually tired, but I didn't know what to do, and foolishly pled guilty to 50 felonies on the spot. And they were just looking at me. Different police jurisdictions would come in wanting to talk to me. I said, 50, that's it. I'm going to get 40 years. I'm 37 years old. But little did I know, that was the storm coming. While I'm in jail, they get me out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nothing good happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, trust me. And they say I have a phone call. You don't get phone calls in jail. But they said, you need to take this. So they brought me down to the office, and they said, there's a kid that's been shot. And I'm like, what kid? I know a lot of kids have been shot. He said, no, this one here. The first shot from a shotgun took his right leg off. They shot him another time with the shotgun, took a lot of his left leg off. They shot him at least 10 more times in the chest, and he's still alive. And everybody is here. His grandmother is here, Big Mama, all of them, my mother. They said, and looks like the whole Blood Street gang is here. They flooded the hospital. But this kid, when he comes in and out of consciousness, he says, I want my daddy. And so they said, he keeps asking for you, and we can't get you released. But if he goes into shock, he's going to die. And I just got on the phone and I said, baby, go to sleep. They said that saved his life. See, I didn't know I was his father. I thought he was just a kid of mine. I didn't know that I meant that much to him. I didn't know that of all the people in the world, when he was in his most desperate situation, he called for me. And I wasn't there. And that's when my heart started changing. So I get out of jail because I pled guilty to 50 felonies. It was a holiday for the police department. They felt we can clear up a bunch of stuff and stuff. And my gang family thought that I had turned a snitch or state's evidence. But all I did was tell on myself. I didn't tell on the rest of the guys. And I go back to work because I was teaching this class of kids, physically disabled adults for Minneapolis Community and Technical College. And if I bailed out right then, they had to start all over on a 9-month course. And I felt that their lives were too important for me to do that. So I'm sitting there, and I made a deal with the police. You know, I'll give you these 50 felonies, but you have to let me teach this class. You have to let me out on bail. And as soon as I signed my life away, they did. And one police officer just shook his head. He said, I've never seen anything like this in his life. But something had touched me. So I go back to my school, and I'm getting ready to teach one day, and one of my students, Mary Ann, came up and said, Mr. Turnipseed, there's newspaper reporters out there. Are they going to make you Teacher of the Year? And I said, are they asking for me? She said, yes. Mr. Turnipseed, she adored me. And then she came back to the door because I wouldn't go out. Mr. Turnipseed, you got to come down now. They're saying bad things about you. They're saying you're a gang member. They're saying you have murdered people. They're saying you're just an evil person. And she broke down crying. She was like my daughter. I mean, I'm like, I closed myself in my office, and I broke down. She broke me. Even my son getting shot did something to me, but this child crying for a person that was supposed to be her hero broke me. And I got on my knees, and I've always worn suits, you know. I got on my knees, and I took one shot. And I said, Jesus, if you are real, you have to come now. No, I can't tell you what he sounded like, but he came in that room. He loved me. He fathered me. He basically told me everything was going to be all right. And I got up, dusted myself off. Everybody was standing outside my office door, and they said I came out laughing because I was filled with joy. My father had finally came. So now, you know, all along there had been a pastor in our neighborhood. We were in an all-black neighborhood, and he's a white guy. You could sort of see him coming a mile away. Here come the preacher. And he would always try to talk to me. God had planted that guy. When I was 13 years old, I met that man. Now I'm 39, and I finally go talk to him. And he accepted me and brought me into his house to live with him for 2 years. See, I was a kid that would have benefited greatly from Hospitality House because you guys would have spoke the language that I grew up with, Jesus. I would have heard somebody tell me that it's going to be all right. You'd have kept me engaged. So in today's life, I'm a pastor. I went back to school, became a minister. I stopped stealing. I ain't stole nothing in 25 years. I work for the organization that helped save my life. It's called Urban Ventures. And the pastor that saved my life had me live with him for 2 years. And I asked him, why would you do that, man? You got a wife, He said, because you're a new creature. I said, but you better ask your wife, man. I wouldn't let no dude in my house, you know, I'm a new creature or whatever and stuff. He said, I've got too much to teach you. And I don't know how much time I have to do that. So even today, we talk. I talk to him 2 or 3 times a week. But if I had to leave you with a message, it would be that I think the most devastating thing in our children's lives today is father absence. When your father walks away from you. Not saying that mothers can't raise children, but I wish for my mother a helpmate. My mother was a great human being, but think of how greater she could have been, man, and how I could have benefited. I wasn't meant for the penitentiary. I wasn't meant to hurt other kids. I was meant to serve the Lord. I was meant to teach my little brothers how to serve the Lord. That's what I was raised to be. But that one thing, my father leaving me, damaged me and had a ripple effect in all my brothers. I'd like to say today that gang, the Rolling 30s Bloods, is no longer the major gang in Minnesota. They called us Murderapolis in 1994, and they brought in the National Guard. And when the National Guard comes knocking, there's certain things that happen. I've got 30 family members in prison for murder. My grandson is doing life without the possibility of parole. My son that got his leg shot off will not get out until he's 65 years old. He's 40 now. So you will reap what you sow, but God will come get you. He is the same person he was when I was 5, that he is in my life today. I live with my grandson and my wife and stuff, and he's not going to be a criminal. No, If the gang would have a problem coming to get this one, or any of my I have 35 grandchildren and stuff. We're no longer feeding the Blood Street gang. So I just want to thank you for listening to me. I just want you to know that God, Jesus, man, he's on the main line. That's for some of you people from down south. As Reverend Hunter was saying up here, he said, when these kids, they're fitting to come up here. I heard that. I said, that's the stock I came from. I want to, like I said, I'm wrapping it up in 30 seconds. God is so important in the lives of kids. But places like Hospitality House is where they get the opportunity to hear about him. They are intentional about hearing and telling them about who Jesus is. Because to some of these kids that come there, Jesus is a well-kept secret. So let's keep praying for Hospitality House and thanking you. 1960, y'all started. 1960, I landed here. And today we're sitting here together. And Jesus is on the main line. Thank you.